Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the meaning and the power of the most important story in business. The one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. This is the story that defines the very character and nature of an organization. At WordWrite, we call this your capital S story. In each episode of Storylines Live, we feature guests who have great insights on business storytelling, who can share their experiences and key learnings to help you and your organization do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable business results. In this episode, we're honored to have Jordan Sanders, a dentist and entrepreneur in both dental medicine and coaching, as our guest. Jordan is redefining what it means to lead in the modern dental world. He's the founder of Ascend Dental Education, where he blends cutting-edge technology with powerful leadership and mindset coaching for dentists looking to scale their impact. He's on a mission to help dentists work smarter, lead better, and live more productive and fulfilling lives intentionally. We're going to have a great deep dive here, digging into all that Jordan is doing. Jordan, welcome to Storylines Live. Is there anything that I missed in sharing your bio?
That was incredible, Paul. No, I think you got it pretty much right on the nose. Thank you.
Great, great. Well, really appreciate you being here with us on Storylines Live. I can safely say you're the first dentist that we've had on Storylines Live, and you have a fascinating story. So that's great.
Appreciate it.
Jordan, we always ask guests on the podcast about their capital S story, and we want to know, in terms of the evolution of your work, which of those four questions that I identified are most important to you right now? Buy, work, invest, or partner?
Yeah, it was an interesting question when you queried me about it, and I looked at a lot of them because there's a lot of ways that we fit into many of those categories. But after distilling it all down, it really came down to partnership. At the end of the day, I'm looking to establish partnerships with the people that need us. We go on these journeys together. We want to be able to offer uh, our insight. But one of the things that one of my mentors told me was that you can only help people that are swimming towards you. So at the end of the day, it's not about working for or working with. It's about being in a partnership that requires both parties to be committed to the result. And so yeah, we partner with other people. We want them to succeed, but we also hold them to a standard. And it's kind of this mutually beneficial arrangement, which inevitably lets me learn more about myself along the way as well.
Hmm. Absolutely. And when you say partner, you're talking about other dental practitioners, right?
Well, it's been interesting because yeah, at its core, that's probably what makes the most sense. We've I'm a dentist. Dentists want to learn from other dentists. But as Ascend has kind of evolved, it's become apparent and a lot more clear that what we teach is really applicable across a very broad spectrum of just business and leadership. We formed a really successful dental office where I'm from in Kelowna, BC, and we get people asking us about it. How is your culture this way? Like, why do you have these things and I don't? And it just came down to just our systems and evolved from there. I think it's really applicable to just entrepreneurship and people that want to be exceptional leaders.
Well, it's very interesting. Let's start there. Regardless of your particular flavor of medical practice, if you're practicing medicine, whether it's dentistry or some other field related or not, the focus seems primarily to be on the practice itself. And in your case, you developed a thriving, very large practice. And then, as you just suggested, you got into some other things. Tell our audience how that happened.
It was born out of necessity. I mean, the story is a bit of a bleak one. I had as you would say, like very successful dental practice. I built it from the ground up
Mhm.
4 years ago, and on paper and to all outside observers, it was kind of ideal. Like I had this ideal life. I have a family, I have a wife at home. I have this practice that is doing for me exactly what I've always wanted it to do. But I was just fundamentally broken human being.
Mm.
And as I kind of started to unpack that, I realized that what I had been doing this entire time was measuring my success and, as a result, my self-worth
Mhm.
by stacking it against what I could achieve.
Ah.
So there was an emotional cost to all of that. And what it led to was just a disconnect at home. My marriage fell apart. I basically had a life at the end of it that no one would want. I was at rock bottom.
Mhm.
And Ascend kind of was born out of this idea. I was talking and doing the the 3D printing, the kind of dental tech stuff. But as we moved into the leadership and mindset stuff, it was just me giving myself permission to do what I needed to do to get better. So I started applying these principles to my own life. And then it was almost impossible for me to not see it in the lives of my colleagues and friends. You see their struggles and you say, hey, I can help you with this. Like I did this. I was where you are at. And this is what I did to dig myself out of there. So, it's really a story about designing a path that saved myself.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And Jordan, you and I spent some time in our pre-interview talking about this. I'm not sure how many of our listeners or viewers recognize, but uh, dental practice has one of the highest rates of mental health issues and suicide rates, along with veterinary medicine. It's an interesting combination that winds up at the top 10 of professions that suffer from these issues. It's kind of like in your case, it strikes me that you've been through some of the worst to develop some of the best ways to manage through difficulties. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, interesting you bring up dentists and vets because to me, it fundamentally makes sense that those two professions have one of the highest rates of mental health issues because they are at their core two professions that spend the entire time training their participants to be either dentists or vets
Hmm.
or do the dentistry or do the veterinary medicine, but they don't spend any time teaching us how to do anything else that's required of us in that circle.
Yeah.
You're dealing with people. At the end of the day, be it animals or teeth, you're dealing with a human being and they are fundamentally flawed creatures. And they come to you with untold fears and anguishes and resentments. And they don't prepare you for the burden, the mental faculties that you have to spend in order to deal with those things. So yeah, I mean, if your worth is tied into your profession, which I think our schooling basically makes impossible for it not to be,
Hmm.
you got to be able to untangle that, which is much easier said than done.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, great technicians or craftspeople is the goal of the education, right? To your point. But there's this huge people component that's not dealt with there. And I think as our listeners have already gotten a sense, you have a very interesting personal story that led you to where you are today. Um, and the story, of course, is why you're on the podcast. I'm always interested because, of course, Storylines Live is all about the capital S story. In your case, it's something of a hero's journey. But I'm interested, Jordan, what's your take on storytelling?
Storytelling is, to me, probably one of the most important aspects of your day-to-day mental preparedness. You are the product of the stories that you tell yourself in your head. Yes, you can tell a story about
Mhm.
your business, you can create a marketing plan, but for me, storytelling is about personal survival. You need to be able to talk and tell yourself internally a story that is going to allow you to succeed.
Mhm.
You need to be able to walk a path that brings you to a better place at the end of the day, because stories can be equally destructive. And one of the things that I find interesting about human nature, and especially those among high achieving individuals, we don't tell ourselves very nice stories very often. We can have the best looking business on the surface. We can have all of the shiny marketing and the great Instagram account and whatever it is, but our personal stories are generally pretty flawed. And you know, I was in shock how many people thought like me. When I was in a bad place, how common that actually is, and how little permission we give ourselves to explore that. Like, that's really fundamentally why I'm here. I want to give other people permission to go down these roads and talk about these things because they're there. And I guess I've seen too many of my colleagues go down dark mental health journeys that even one of them not doing that would be a win.
Wow, that's really a great statement, Jordan, for sure. I was reading an article about a recent study, and the conclusion of the study was that 95% of the thoughts that most people have every day are negative. Uh, you know, in our journey to explore storytelling, one of the things we've learned is the fundamental purpose, as you suggested, of stories, especially early on in human development, was preservation, right? There's at the very elemental level of the brain, one of the things that I think we probably all experienced is we see something out of the corner of our eye in our peripheral vision and we don't know what it is. Well, that's a very old threat instinct, right? Is that a tiger that I need to be aware of, or is that the wind rustling the leaves, right? But that is just one example of this cycle that you're talking about. So you're now in a place where a big part of what you do every day is helping others, right? Through your coaching, etc. One of the things we talk about in our work is your why. And Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why, is a big part of that, a taproot, if you will, of the work that we do. What's your why? Why are you doing these things to help other people?
Yeah, I mean, I love Simon's work. It's Start With Why was one of the foundational books that I actually based the dental office startup on. So we had a really interesting why in that realm. And I think that helped us be as successful as we are. But yeah, now it's definitely morphed. Like my why is really just to share my journey so that other people don't have to. It's about giving people permission. It's really deep down what it is. I want people to feel like they have permission to talk about the things that no one wants to talk about. Um, because at the end of all of that, that leads to business success. If you're able to tap into all of these things that you see when you stare at in the mirror in the morning, you'd be amazed at how much of your culture, business, the issues that you face on a day-to-day basis will just resolve themselves. You build systems that are based around a actually functioning mental load, and the rest is pretty easy. It doesn't take as much rocket science as people think it does.
Yeah, that is so true. Um, what you just shared reminds me of a quote from a book that's nearly 100 years old, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And one of the lines that always stuck with me from that book is that within the seeds of every failure is, excuse me, within every failure are the seeds of an equivalent success. And that's certainly the case in your journey and what you've done with your work. And folks, we're going to dig into that more deeply right after we take this break. Don't go away. Folks, thanks for being with us for this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. In this episode, we're honored to have Jordan Sanders, a dentist in Kelowna, BC, right?
Correct.
Wow. We're recording this in the morning Eastern time for me. It must be like the crack of dawn for you, Jordan. Is that accurate?
Yes, it's pretty early.
Okay. All right. Well, I know a lot of dental practices, you start your day pretty early. We really want to dig into what we were talking about before the break, which is your focus on helping others. And this you had this transformational experience where you decided to more broadly work with others, which led, of course, to Ascend Dental Education. Can you give us just a sense of what it is exactly that you do to help your clients?
Yeah, I mean our entire scope is forever expanding. It's if you'd asked me 6 months ago what Ascend did, at its core and foundationally, we are a dental education company. We teach dentists how to implement 3D printing and design in their offices for them to be able to take some control back. But what spiraled out of that was a presentation of the systems that we use within our practice
Hmm.
to help implement some of these new pieces of tech, which
Sure.
led to questions from my participants about, hey, like, how do you do these things? And oh, I've seen your office on social media. Like, how does it looks really interesting? Tell me more about that. All of that kind of led to us, yes, continuing to teach dental stuff because at the end of the day we are dentists, but also about how other people can run their practices with a better kind of outlook. We teach systems, we teach business, we teach money. We obviously want people to be successful
Yes.
and to have healthy practices. But what it really is about is I help dentists reclaim time.
Hmm.
I get them to have a hard look at this mental thing that we have as professionals where we feel like we're the only ones capable of doing something in a way that's acceptable
Right.
to a bar that's we don't trust our teams to do it for us. What that leads to is a disconnect in your team, but also this responsibility that you have to do it all.
Yes.
Burnout. The cycle's very easy to get into.
Hmm.
And so I help dentists to look at their days and start by just fixing their heads in when it comes to their time and being like, you need to value your time more. You need to be relieving yourself of tasks that you should not be doing, like your payroll, your bookkeeping, whatever it is, and use that time for something that either fires you up or makes you money. Those are the two things. If it happens to be both of them, that's great. But, prioritize your health, go to the gym, spend some time with your family,
Hmm.
plan vacation, start a new business, whatever it is.
Right.
We just want people to come back to their dental offices fired up for what they do because I want them to create a career that they never have to retire from if they don't want to. They're not leaving the career because they couldn't do another round of dentistry if their life depended on it.
Hmm.
So that's where it came from. I get a lot of intrinsic joy out of seeing people go from being burnt to a crisp to being really very stable in their environment and without changing too much, just a couple little mental tweaks.
Wow, that's amazing. And I see what you were sharing earlier about how these principles can apply to pretty much any business, a founder-led business for sure. Or when in the beginning it's mostly you, and then you have a team, and being able to delegate and focus your work, as Stephen Covey said, in your area of core competency, right? Rather than, uh, uh, most dentists probably didn't get into dentistry to be doing payroll, right? That's that's not their area of greatest joy, right? Now, Jordan, you mentioned earlier in the episode that it's been about 4 years that you've been practicing.
Yeah, since I opened my practice, I've been a dentist for about a decade,
Okay. All right.
but I opened up my startup practice 4 years ago.
Wow. 4 years. That is really a fast rise. Kudos. To what do you attribute that?
I mean, it is multifaceted for sure. There's some dumb luck in there. I happen to be in a city that is a really desirable place to live, so there's lots of people moving here. At the end of it, we're kind of prisoners of our patients. They people got to come through the front door for us to be able to actually earn a living.
Yes.
But because of the timing of everything, like I signed my lease for the space that I'm in 1 month after COVID shut the world down in 2020.
Yeah.
And that was terrifying to start off. But I had some time, because we were off, I spent a bunch of time just really refining what I wanted the place to look like from both an architectural point of view and from a systems point of view. Built out all of the mentalities and the kind of mindsets that I wanted to exist within that office and just built it from there. So we started small. There was four of us, including myself. Today we're 18, including myself. So it's
Wow.
a big team. But I still have all of my original team from when we opened, and I just attribute it to really being able to take myself out of the equation a little bit. Like, yes, I laid the foundation. Yes, I spent a bunch of time building up the office to what it started out as.
Mhm.
But the office is today is not the office that started out. It has been built by the people that work with me. My inputs in a lot of places are not as crucial anymore because I have leadership in the office that's really invested. So, I mean, buy-in from the team is really what can make or break a dental office. And people saw that, our patients saw that, they talked about that, and we've stayed quite popular as a result of just how we treat people, be it the patient or be it the teams. So yeah, I mean, it sounds so basic, but in the dental world, the bar is very low. There's a lot of offices out there that might not care too much about that stuff because they've been privileged by the fact that patients and everybody has teeth. Everybody needs something sometime. And
Yes.
so the pressure to do some of those things might not be there, but that's just not how I wanted to work. I wanted something that was more than just a dental practice.
Well, what you share right there, Jordan, is what I would call passion, right? So a story that succeeds, to look at this going backwards, when people talk about the story, in this case, I would look at the story as more of towards an end result. But if there's no passion in the story, it's like there's no fuel in the engine. And you've certainly got that. Um, what you just shared, certainly there are folks who, or in any industry, whether it's healthcare or whatever, who are, let's say, these are my words. I'm not putting these words in your mouth. Fat, dumb, and happy, where they
Yeah.
just don't know that things could be better. But could you share with our audience a success story? Certainly, you don't need to share any names, but just give people a picture, a sense of the experience that somebody you've worked with has enjoyed because of your working with them.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that the stories would be vastly different, but the one thing that's been really interesting in this journey is to see how similar everyone's struggles are.
Hmm.
We always start when we're onboarding a new coaching client, we do a discovery call with them where we're really just kind of rip the scab off and just see what comes out. And without fail, every single coaching client has cried in that first appointment. Like
Wow.
without fail. There's some like you can see it in their eyes, just the overwhelm that there's been from either just trying to manage it all themselves or being really frustrated with their team that they're either unwilling or they feel are unable to take some of the burden off to just inserting into that mindset really small changes that basically take the excuses away. Like I really want to hold people accountable to the fact that having a successful dental practice, other than doing good dentistry, is really about getting out of your own head
Wow.
and realizing that you have a team that wants to support you. And so as we kind of do that, you can kind of gradually see, because we do Zoom coaching calls twice a month.
Mhm.
You start to see them just smiling more and more. And they're coming onto the coaching calls and there's there's less sad look in their faces. So it's this really neat transition. It's maybe a bit anecdotal and hard to measure, but you can see the changes in their faces. And we're just giving people back time. Like that's all it is. It's saying, let's get rid of a couple hours a week of the stuff that you don't want to do or need to do. Let's figure out how we can unload that. Let's create the systems so that you can live the life that you want to live. Like, as you said, fat, dumb, and happy, like, great. If you're happy, that's awesome. Like, do that. But I would argue that most people probably are just those first two. It's especially as entrepreneurs, we are so hard on ourselves and we never are satisfied with the goal that we get to. We always find something else.
Yes.
And so our personalities are not built at their base to be okay with status quo. And so we gotta look at that. You gotta say, okay, that's fine. You should definitely do that if that's what you're passionate about, but we need to do it in a healthy way.
Absolutely. Wow, such great insights, Jordan. It's been such a great pleasure to have you on Storylines Live. I really appreciate you doing this episode. How can people best reach you?
By far the best way to reach us is on Instagram. So it's Ascend Dental Education. I did have an offer for anybody if you're interested in coaching. Just fire me a DM, say the word coach, and what I'll do is I'll send you a time audit exercise. It's a really kind of early intro thing we do with our clients to help them just see where their time is going. And it's a really eye-opening exercise. So it's something I definitely recommend. But you give us a follow on Instagram, send me a DM. I'll give you that. Otherwise, our website, ascenddentaleducation.com, has all of our dental offerings, but also our coaching page and information about that there.
Wonderful, Jordan. Thank you so much. And folks, will include all these links in the show notes. I want to say thanks again, Jordan, for joining me for this episode of Storylines Live. And to all of our listeners and viewers, thank you for being here with us on this storytelling journey. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, Storylines Live.